Today's podcast episode is sponsored by Let's Go. Let's Go is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization committed to generating opportunities for youth and young adults through STEM education and workforce development. Welcome back to the Let's Grow Together podcast presented by Let's Go. I'm Hannah Ross, joined by my fantastic co-host,
Ray McKetty.
and we are going to be talking about AI and emerging technologies today. So let's go ahead and kind of jump right in on this, Ray. Do you want to give
Yeah,
us a quick overview of what AI is and kind of start our conversation out?
for sure. So I know that's a big buzzword that has been just flying around, ping-ponging around since um the early 2020s. Like AI, what is it? What does it do? What's going on? And the definition that we got from a quick Google search supported by AI. AI stands for artificial intelligence, and it's a technology that allows computers to perform tasks that usually require human intelligence. And so it's a pretty broad field. Those that are in it usually have to have some competencies in computer science, mathematics, cognitive science, statistics, etc. And AI is used to perform a wide variety of tasks, as we will get into today. And there's just a lot of cool stuff that comes with it, a lot of really interesting implications for the future of humanity, and also some kind of scary things to look out for too. Depending on which side of the tracks you're viewing it from. So,
That's a great definition, and I love that it talked about the different fields that you might need to know about or kind of
mhm.
understand, because AI really is that like big umbrella term. It gets thrown around all the time. We hear it connected to tons of different things, but it really is just that umbrella term. And so it's nice to have that kind of definition and take that step back that it's just a computer model, right?
Mhm.
It's a set of codes and algorithms that are able to continually improve and do what we want them to do based on our guidance. But it's not, a computer super brain that's thinking on
Mhm.
its own. It's not running off and doing its own thing yet, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Right. Yep. That's
Right now, it is just a computer algorithm. And I love
mhm.
that definition because it really hits on that it's this big umbrella, but at its base, it's all code and it's all something
Mhm.
that we've created and are helping to guide.
Yeah. Created to help make our lives easier. I should mention, as is the case with all technology, right? And it's interesting, in my research, uh with AI, the field started back in the 1960s, and they were just really using it. It was really, really basic and rudimentary. And it's not like they had all the like the processing power and the chips and technology that uh we have today. But it's like, back in the day, they would use these little models, little computers to just do really basic tasks. And that's, to be honest with you, that's been our relationship with AI for a minute. Like, you have these computer programs that are really good at doing maybe this one thing, right? And that's been the kind of flow of AI for a minute, and it's gotten better and better, right? To the point where, in the late like maybe like the 70s, 80s, 90s, they were starting to program AI to learn how to play chess and then eventually start beating world champions at chess. So it's like, but that wasn't a predictor of like, oh my God, it's chess one day, Terminator the next. No, no, no. It's been very slow and steady up to this point. It's kind of exploded a little bit, but um to just kind of we'll take it a step at a time and talk about what kind of AI models are out there and maybe what some of their functions are, what they do.
Yeah, so I feel like AI is in a lot more things than we might realize.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you're seeing, like an app that recommends a TV show, if you've ever gone on a website that had like a customer service chat bot, used like Google Translate, even, those
Mm-hmm.
are all programs that were trained for a specific function, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
chatbots have been trained to provide answers to a set of questions based off of what that company thinks you might need to ask about.
Mm-hmm.
Or Google Translate. It's getting better with time and more information, but it's all at its heart just one of these computer programs. And they've grown a lot. You might see some of the really impressive ones out there right now, like ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
Gemini, Claude. All of those are text based AI systems, and they're getting really impressive, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
speak to them, you can input text to them, and they can give you a really well thought out answer, thought
Mm-hmm.
out in quotation marks, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all
Mm-hmm.
machine learning. It's taking information it found somewhere else and it's using that to answer your questions or offer
Mm-hmm.
more information.
Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting to see again how, like, as human beings, our mirror to AI, because as we have grown and evolved as a species, we have built upon the information and the data and the learning that we've accumulated over the centuries of us being on this planet. And as our collective intelligence has grown, so too has, like, our you know our medicine, our technology, the way that we communicate complex issues and problems. And so it's just interesting to see us, slowly but surely do that, but in like a digital way. And uh, again, there's everybody's like trying to figure out, okay, where is this thing going? Is it moving faster than we might be ready for? All valid questions, but I just love the parallels as a somebody who loves pattern recognition. And again, these models, they're based off of pattern recognition. Like, it really is kind of like a Geppetto Pinocchio type of moment, and I just, the moment that any of these AR starts, like, I have no streams, then we'll probably have something to talk about. But but
No, that's actually another great point that you just brought up, that what these models are able to produce is all based off of what kind of data they have in them. What are they learning from?
mhm,
If they're learning from a really, well-structured data set, if you're trying to create a chatbot to answer questions and you have thousands and thousands and thousands of questions that people might ask, that's going to be a much different chatbot than if you train it on answering 10 questions, right?
right,
I love
right,
that you brought that up, that it's only as good as the data that is part of it and the data
hmm
that it's been trained on. It can only repeat what it knows. And
hmm
that's an awesome point that you brought up.
right, right. Um, which, I think there's also, when we hear the different kinds or types of AI, we hear generative, trained model. Do we wanna like talk about that a little bit, about, like, like, what is the difference? Who cares? Like, what does it mean to have a generative AI model, or what is machine learning, or what is predictive AI? Like, what do all these things mean, and how does it kind of play out in our day-to-day life?
Yeah, so let's start with machine learning. I think that one's probably the easiest to start with and the most
Mm-hmm.
basic,
Mm-hmm.
because machine learning uses algorithms, just sets of sequences of instructions that are, set to achieve a goal,
Mm-hmm.
trained on data sets. So those algorithms receive a data set and then it continually improves based off of the human brains behind it,
Mm-hmm.
telling those machine learning models if they're correct or not. And so the data sets are constantly improved. That's why a lot of times, if you are using a um, AI language model, it'll ask if it can collect that data because it's always trying to improve. And so your answers are also its training. It's saying, did I
Mm-hmm.
answer this correctly? Was this what you needed? So that when you say no, it goes back and it improves that sequence of instructions or that
Mm-hmm.
algorithm to
Mm-hmm.
achieve the goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of leads us into like generative AI, right? And some of the programs that are out there. We have OpenAI, we've got Sora, we've got um um what is that? What's the one that does images? I should have it in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
But you know which one I'm talking, the one that generates images. And a lot of them are starting to but it is again, it utilizes machine learning to create new and original content. So, you can ask ChatGPT these days, hey, you could give them maybe like 5, 10, 15 keywords and say, could you make a play out of these words here? And it will do it. Like it will do it like that, a whole completely new concept based off of all the data that it's received. It can then create or generate something completely different, or they'll generate images. And then OpenAI's Sora does videos now too, which is insane. They look crazy because, if you see some of these videos, I mean, AI is the worst it's ever going to be right now, which is a crazy thing because some of these things look really, really wild. Like there's some that you're like, that's definitely AI. And then there's others where you're like, this could get, because this could get weird. So, yeah, they can create all kinds of new and original content. I've seen music be made with AI. I've seen AI used to replicate or imitate the voices of famous people, or the faces or voices of famous people, deep fakes. I remember when that was being discussed and circulated, and I was like, oh, that's concerning. um and now we're just in like it seems like year after year we're making quantum leaps, it feels like. So that's generative AI. It takes like existing data or data that's collected to create new, as I understand it, new images, content, videos, etc. And I think it's the one that a lot of us are kind of familiar with, like the general population are starting to kind of get familiar with. And then there's predictive AI. Are you like that's like the um I think a lot of people in finance use predictive AI models to, figure out what the trends are going to look like so they can make better decisions on what kind of investments and stuff that they want to do. And as I understand it, predictive is also for like what they use for recommending, um, you know, uh, television shows,
Yep.
like Netflix and stuff. And I also want to say maybe even Spotify too. Like my Spotify is so niche. I feel like my algorithm knows me. Like I have no qualms, no beef. Like, you know, um, but it's just crazy to see just how much it's learned about me. Like these personal
Mhm.
apps that I use, how much it knows about me. To the degree that like I almost kind of rely on, like so as a musician, as an artist, like I really appreciate getting new sounds and being exposed to new music, and like the degree to which something like Spotify with its algorithm and its own predictive models is able to give me stuff that it knows I'm gonna like. And I just kind of like, just eating good. Like, thank you, this is great. Um, so yeah, it's just really fascinating. Just to see how much of it is already in the stuff that we use every day. Like this is not new.
Hmm.
But I guess the way that it has come onto the scene with generative AI and OpenAI and all that stuff is been, I think, the thing that's blown a lot of our minds. So,
Yeah, and the last one that we can talk about is natural language processing, which I
mm,
feel like fits in perfect with the generative AI conversation, as well as the being a little bit mind blown
mm-hmm,
by how well it can match what we associate with real people. Natural
mm,
language processing is a model and are multiple models that are developed to make it so that when you interact with something that's AI, it feels like you're interacting with a person, not a computer that speaks in weird, choppy sentences or gives you videos that have way too many fingers or
yeah,
whatever, something that's going to feel like a real person. I think that's
mm-hmm,
the Google Gemini selling point at this point in time. That's what they're really pushing is that natural language processing system that they've got going, that it's supposed to be a very person to person feel. And
mm,
when you're getting into generative AI and creating text, creating videos, things like that, that you want to feel like are very
mm-hmm,
real, they feel like someone could have made them.
mm-hmm,
Um, Definitely that natural language processing is coming into play there. And you can start to see some of the overlap in these
yeah,
different
yeah,
ones that we've talked about. They're not silos alone, right? You
no,
can't have one without the other. They're all starting to get mixed together
yeah,
and they're all working together to, whether for better or for worse, whatever you like or don't like about AI, they're all
yeah,
starting to become integrated together for the output that you're getting.
yeah, yeah. It reminds me of there's this movie that I remember seeing. I didn't watch it, but I remember watching like the trailers and seeing some reviews about it. It's this movie. Uh, I think it was Joaquin Phoenix was in it. It's called Her.
Her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the whole thing of the premise of the movie was like he just kind of basically forms this deep relationship with this AI. And it's just so interesting as someone who's like in the whole right brain artsy fartsy like world. I just think it's so interesting, the whole life imitating art imitating life. I think we're really gonna start to see a lot of people leaning on and relying on um AI in that way, because I mean we're living in a time where uh things are, to make an understatement, tense and uncomfortable and uncertain. And people are siloed, I think. And, for those who find it hard to connect or feel disconnected, AI can emerge as a way. It already has in so many ways for a lot of people, including myself. Like I was just talking to you the other day about a conversation I was having with ChatGPT that it just gave me some things to. I was like, oh, put some things into perspective. So it's just interesting to see the way, and I think this kind of like is leads into our next thing about how do we use and how can we use AI in life and work. I think you know, baseline, I think people want to feel connected to something. And I think AI can serve as a mirror. It can serve as a mirror, it can serve as an advisor, and like the more it learns and the more developed and advanced it gets, I think the more I think it can help to serve as a way for us to feel more connected to ourselves. If we let it, if we use it with conscious intention and awareness, and we're not doing all kind of crazy stuff. But what other ways are you seeing we can use it and are already using it in life and in work, Hannah? How's that going on your end?
We've talked about a few of them already, things like chatbots for websites, recommendations for shows, music, translation. If you have Siri or Google or whatever the Android equivalent is on your
Hmm.
phone, that's speech recognition. All of those things, there's conversations always about things like self-driving cars, right?
Yeah.
Those are all going to currently use or need to use AI in the future. But one of the places I really wanted to talk about today is in healthcare. We talk a
Hmm.
lot about AI in kind of our everyday lives, and we will talk more about that in the places that it can be used. But one of the places that is most important, maybe, for
Hmm.
AI is really in healthcare. We're seeing
Yeah.
it across all industries, but AI as a tool for recognition of diseases and assistance with diagnosis could be a huge benefit going forward.
Hmm.
You could train it on large data sets. There might be some ethical issues there, which we're going to touch
Hmm.
on a little bit throughout this whole podcast. But you would need to make sure that everybody whose data is being used, that data is safe, that data is secure.
Right.
Nothing's going to be shared about that person. But once a model is trained and it could be, double checked and has gone through all of the rigorous testing it would need, it basically works as a diagnostic partner for doctors, nurses, practitioners. Think
Mm-hmm.
about bone breaks. Sometimes really small fractures are hard to see, or they can look different on different people.
Right.
If you have a fracture in the same place that you had previously broken a bone,
Right.
that's going to look different. Breast cancer looks different on almost every person. That's why it can be so hard to diagnose. It's because it's going to look different in every person's body. And
Right.
so if you have a tool that's been trained on hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of cases of whatever this is, it can be easier for that AI system to detect. It could lead to earlier diagnosis. It could lead to diagnosis of rare diseases that are
Hmm.
sometimes missed because if there's only 10 people in the world with your disease, right, that's not going to be the first thing they look for.
Right.
But an AI system that can go through tons and tons and tons of data may be able to help you get that diagnosis faster. It may be able to combine information from different sources more easily, and you might have a better outcome because it's able to combine all of that information. This is not to say that you still don't need doctors, nurses, and practitioners, right? You always need the brain behind the computer, something that's
Hmm.
going to double check, something that's going to validate, something that's going to be able to use their own hard earned knowledge and intelligence and experience.
And
But if
humanity.
AI could get them there faster, it could give them more options,
Hmm.
or even just be able to speed up that timetable to diagnosis. That
Yeah.
could be huge for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So first things first, we got to make sure that the AI is abiding by HIPAA. And then, we could be seeing a uh, just a huge leap in our medical advancements, which is exciting. There's so much about AI that is exciting. Because not just in medical advancements, but our understanding of um, math or even like quantum computing or what have you. It can go a long way if we are using these tools. Uh, but there's also a risk associated with AI, as with anything in life. There's always a balance, and I know, just from what the research that I've done, what I've come to find out is just the effect that AI has on the environment, like the all of the uh like the cooling down of the um computers or the the servers, it costs uses a lot of water to like cool these things down, which can be costly, not super efficient, and just overall not like just puts a strain on the environment in general. And there's a couple other of risks associated with AI, that I think you were talking about earlier, like some of the more uh, sociological, uh, features that might be effective just by our own biases. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Hannah? Because I know
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few different pieces to this because, yeah, you touched on the environmental issue, and that's seen especially with generative AI, uses about a
Mm-hmm.
bottle of water per search or question on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
then, even beyond the environmental impact, we talked earlier about the AI models are only as good as the data sets they're trained on. And
Right.
so, to go back to our healthcare example, our medical textbooks, our medical training is not as diverse as we would like to think it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most studies that have been done with white men as the kind of neutral group.
Mm-hmm.
So when a disease looks different on a woman's body or on black skin, is that AI model going to have enough data about those different bodies
Mm-hmm.
to be able to accurately provide information? Or is training a model on that very narrow data set of white men going to continue to perpetuate our medical racism and
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep us in this mold that white men are the neutral group and other groups are going to be undiagnosed? They're going to be wrongfully diagnosed. And we could have some serious issues with that. We see the same thing with predictive modeling.
Mm-hmm.
One of the places you mentioned earlier, using it in finance, which is awesome. One of the other places that predictive modeling is being used is in predictive policing.
Mm-hmm.
That's being based off of historical information about locations and communities.
Yep.
You think over time, we have historical over policing of certain communities along racial and ethnic lines. Those communities are going to be vastly overrepresented in the data sets that we're now training these models on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's no wonder you're going to see these models further predicting crime or issues in these locations just because it's not a comprehensive data set.
Yeah. That's I keep bringing up TV shows and I can't help it, or TV shows and media and movies, and but there's like I can't remember the name of the show or the media exactly, but that was kind of the premise where it was like there was this uh society we had developed a technology to predict um if a person was predisposed or going to commit some kind of crime or was like a danger to society, and like just before anybody had even committed a crime. And maybe in the show notes we could put the name of those things, or maybe just like a list of things about AI and some of the research that we've done. That'd be cool. But
Definitely.
yeah, I think that that is those are always what I'm hearing and what I've been learning, through this conversation and just through the research about AI, is that AI meets us insofar as we've met ourselves, and we, as a species, as a society, has still have so much work to do, and that will be reflected in AI. Wherever our weaknesses or shortcomings are, it'll be that much more important to, have watchdog groups, to have third party observers, to have people that are bringing up ethics issues, who are making sure that people's data is protected. Because one thing that we did see with um especially with the beginning, when ChatGPT just come out, and OpenAI was like fresh on the scene, was a lot of artists were uh, really like raising the alarm bells on their work being, being lifted by by this AI, and basically thrown into this churner. You know the way they make chicken nuggets where they throw everything in and then the paste comes out. That was basically what they were doing with people's work. And there was just a lot of concern around it, because it was like, yo, like stuff that we've taken years to create is being lifted by these programs, and no work is no credit is given to the artists themselves. There's no compensation, and that's and people just like, well, whatever. But it was the reason for like the writer's strike, or one of the reasons. One of the things that they cited was like, hey, we want to make sure that we're not being replaced by AI. Like, a
Mhm.
lot of actors are saying, hey, we don't want our faces to be generated or recreated with AI. Like, that's, like, I'm being very explicit in saying no to that. So yeah, a lot of ethics issues, and can't even, I mean, gosh, I mean, if a deep fake got into the wrong hands or was, I think one thing I saw, on TikTok not too long ago was uh they would have these presidents talking to each other, like playing Uno games or something, like like card games or just like video games or something. And it was super funny to listen to these to these AI voices of these presidents. It was like Biden, Obama, Trump, like just chatting like they're friends. I was like, wow. But just imagine, as technology continues to get better, like the line between what we what we know to be true and what is not is, I mean, people's um you know digital literacy and media literacy, isn't it's already kind of hard for some people to be able to parse what's true and what's not on the internet. Imagine AI in the mix now. It's just going to be even more difficult, I think. And we're only going to evolve more and more with each year as AI becomes more powerful and these programs become more powerful. So, yeah, I think, yeah, it just definitely a lot of environmental, ethical, um, you know, things to keep in mind when we are discussing AI, and just things to stay on top of, because it can get messy quickly.
Definitely. But you brought up actually a really great point there of this kind of ethical responsibility, but on two different sides. That you've got your kind of large organization ethical responsibility, talking about ChatGPT and OpenAI and how they were trained on a lot of stolen information, a lot of data that they did not, give credit to or get permission to use. That kind of information has come out, and different organizations and experts have basically said that ChatGPT, OpenAI, those models would never have even been able to be created without all of that stolen data.
Hmm.
All of these generative AI options, whether they're for images, text, would not have been able to be done without that stolen data.
Right.
And so that's one side of the ethics debate, right? We need to have better regulations or watchdog organizations or whatever that's going to look like as we go forward,
Right.
or, those companies. But there's also that personal ethics side of what are you going to do with AI? How are you going to use it? We hear this a lot about schools and with students. I know even in my classes that there is now a AI section on the syllabus talking
Mm.
about what is and is not an acceptable use of AI. You
Hmm.
can use something like ChatGPT as a brainstorming partner, right? Maybe to get you started on your paper. I want to talk about these topics. What would be, topics that are connected to this, or can you suggest research papers, right? Something to start you on your path as a brainstorming partner. Maybe
Right.
something that's helping you with your language. This is what I'm trying to say. Help me write this specific sentence. But a lot of classes, a lot of teachers are going to request to see what the inputs that you're putting into something like ChatGPT
Mm,
are, what
mm,
it's giving you, and how that's different from what you've submitted, right? If you're
mm,
asking it to write your whole paper, what are you getting out of it? Where is your own personal ethics in that?
right.
And are you still learning what you want to be learning? Are
Right.
you ethically against, generative AI or this or that? Where do you fall on this? And
Mm,
what your own personal ethics tell you is going to be something worth exploring for every person. I think that, especially while we're still kind of in this Wild West time
yeah.
without a lot of large scale responsibility from the top,
Right.
we're going to need to decide, what do I believe is okay? What am I okay with using it for? And
Hmm.
how am I going to do that?
Yeah. I think my approach to AI, just to, throw my own um personal view into the mix is I look at AI as a tool, and just like with any tool, you can use it for help or for harm. And so I know if I am creating something and it's a personal something, you know what I mean? Like it's like a personal piece of work. That as good as AI is going to get, it's not going to be able to replace like the original idea or thoughts that, are coming from me. AI can help me shaping up whatever it is that I'm making. They can help shape up the stuff I'm making. Um they can help me like kind of mold my voice a little bit, but I'm not gonna go and like rely on ChatGPT to come up with a song for me. Like I don't want to use it in that way as a crutch. I want to maintain that level of integrity. Um, Another thing, in my work, in like work for Let's Go, how many emails that like I'll type up the email and I'll be like, hey, chat, how's this look? And it'll make it nice and neat and clean and organized, beautiful. Like that to me is a great and acceptable use of AI. Um, where it's like I'm still kind of, you know, uh having my voice be heard and used, but I'm not over reliant necessarily, and I'm not phoning it in. I'm still making sure that I'm, the brain behind the computer. So
I love that about just using it as a tool, right? It can be there to help you, to support you, to clean up some language, whatever, but using your own brain, still being the brain behind the tool, and thinking about it as a tool. I really like that way to think about it. And I think it is a more accurate gauge of what it might be in the future, right?
yeah, I think just the one final thing that I kind of want to touch on, I think is cool to just, ponder about. We talked about, oh, AI. When everybody thinks about AI, they think about the movies, like Terminator or Her or what have you. Take your pick. The Megan movie. Um, and when people think about AI that is like that, they're thinking more so around what's called artificial general intelligence. And that is kind of wrapped up in this idea of singularity, which is like when we've already established that machine learning is that's AI, these programs that are able to do tasks that humans are not able to do. or humans would be able to do, but like they maybe do it faster by like teaching itself. But it's like this is like on a whole other level where it's able to reason, where it's able to like think way so many steps ahead of what we're even looking for, asking for. It's able to improve its software, hardware capabilities. It's able to, when we think about it like a singularity, it's a form of AI that is able to improve itself exponentially, and starts moving into the realm of actual what we think when we think of artificial intelligence, like iRobot type stuff. Like that is where people there's like been a lot of buzz in the AI world about when we might start to see AGI, when we might start to see a singularity, if you will. And you know, I can't recall the name of the guy. It was a TED Talk guy that I was watching, but he was saying that 2029 is when we might start to see that come to pass at the 2029 or sometime in the 2030s. And I don't know, like if we get to that point, that would mark the beginning of a new era in human history. And I think that um, it does pose a lot of really interesting questions about consciousness, awareness, like what does it mean to be conscious, right? If essentially like something can come alive within a computer, like what does that mean for the rest of us? So I just, those are just some of the things that um the real juicy stuff that when I think about AI, what kind of appeals to me is just the implications of what happens if we get to a certain point in our technological advancement of this particular type of technology. So,
No,
yeah,
that's great. That actually leads me into my last little tidbit of information for today that I didn't think I was going to be able to find a place to sneak in. But here, you gave me the opening.
there you go.
So in 2024, two of the Nobel Prizes were given to researchers in AI or AI related fields. But one of them is in chemistry. That was for protein folding, which is very cool, but not relevant to this right now. The other one went to two physicists who started their work in AI in the 80s. One came before, one came a couple years after, kind of building on the first one. And they are both kind of considered to be the fathers of AI. And they started, and their research in the 80s was focused on brain inspired artificial networks. These are
Mm,
called neural networks. It's the same term that we use for
mm,
brains.
mm-hmm.
And that is the foundation of machine learning today. So they were inspired by the way that brains function, the way that our neurons can ping to each other
Yep.
and be very efficient in terms of communicating information as well as low energy. And both of those researchers now, actually, they are in their late 80s, early 90s, have become they're still proponents of AI, but they have become very concerned that AI
Mm,
may be moving slightly too quickly for us, that we may not be fully in control of what we've created as we go
mm,
forward.
yep.
And I find that really fascinating that the two people who are most credited with kind of starting us on this journey, they're receiving their Nobel Prizes 40 odd years after their work started, are also two of the people who are starting to raise some alarm bells and say, hey, we need to do some work here and
Yeah.
we need to have some real conversations and thoughts about what this looks like for us going forward and how do we safely, efficiently, um, all of these things use AI in ways that are still going to be allowing for the human at the center. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
really fascinating intersection of science and technology and philosophy and ethics and
Yeah.
all of these different things that we get to grapple with over the
Yeah.
next 5, 10, 20 years because this is growing so quickly and we're going to have a lot of learning to do. And for anybody listening, now is the time to start learning,
Mm-hmm.
start keeping up, whether you use AI or not. Get to know a little bit about it. What's
Yep.
out there? What are the purposes of it? And if you're thinking about going into a field that's going to be using a lot of AI going forward, maybe start dipping your toe in it and feel
It's
out,
not too late.
what does that look like?
Yeah.
What kind of things could you learn? Could you use? Like Ray mentioned at the very beginning, science, math, statistics, computer science, all of these things are going to get tied together with the different fields that AI is used in. And
Yeah.
now is the time to start thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is our Jurassic Park moment. This is our, so focused on if that we could, don't know if we should moment, but all the same, we are in something of an arms race with when it comes to AI, and maybe we can do another episode on AI just to talk about how other countries are using it in the we didn't even get to touch on DeepSeek this time around, but I think it's worth exploring, and I think this conversation is one worth um keeping up with and continuing to have as AI becomes more advanced and as we deepen our knowledge on it. I think it's worth coming back to the table and discussing. And who knows, maybe we might even have a language model or language AI on here as a guest, and that would be insane. That'd be intense.
You're just going to have to remain listening and see what we can do next
Yeah.
because I fully agree. I think this is a conversation worth coming back to. And so you're just going to have to stay tuned and see what comes next.
Thank you all so much for tuning in for another episode of the Let's Grow Together podcast. As always, we are your hosts, Ray McKetty,
Hannah Ross,
and we are so excited to continue this conversation with you. We'll see you all next time, okay? Take
bye.
care.